on news-related issues, we have taken different approaches in different markets. So, for example, the partnership that we've been able to strike with the Walkley Foundation in Australia is something that we haven't seen in other markets. It's a pretty significant investment over 3 years, supporting regional publishers, innovative digital publishers, public interest journalism. It's an experiment. It's an innovation that's happening in Australia that's not happening in different countries. And so I think the news market is different in each country. What consumers want to see does have some variance between countries. So I wouldn't necessarily see any signal of what's happening in another market as something that's necessarily going to indicate what's going to happen in Australia.
And Josh, what do you think the difference is then between a grants program like the one that you've just outlined that you do with the Walkley Foundation, and simply handing money under the terms of an agreement such as the ones that you struck in the shadow of the News Media Bargaining Code directly to media organisations? What's innovative about grants that's not innovative or doesn't deliver innovation under the current contracts?
Yeah, great question, Monica. Well, the constraint about commercial agreements is they have to be able to demonstrate a commercial return. That's the point underpinning commercial agreements. When you're thinking about a grant program, you can have some flexibility to innovate or to try something experimental, or a little bit more freedom to do something new without necessarily expecting a return within that commercial period. And so I think there's some really interesting stuff that's happening with digital publishers in Australia, with regional publishers finding new ways to reach audiences, with publishers experimenting with ways of reaching new audiences, of generating new revenue. And so something that is based around grants rather than needing to be able to show a commercial return within a couple of years does provide greater flexibility. People can take bigger risks and be bolder. And we think that's the type of innovation that's really good to see and that we're really pleased to be a part of.
And is that likely to occur in the future through a third party like the Walkley Foundation, or are you open to coming to direct agreements with media organisations about the nature of those grants?
Well, again, I wouldn't speculate, but I think it's a really interesting time where there's a whole range of different parties thinking about the right ways to encourage the sustainability of public interest journalism in Australia. And we all really have a role to play. I think governments are thinking about this. I think academics and experts like you, Monica, are thinking about this. Publishers obviously are as well, and digital platforms are too. We are seeing changes even in the digital platforms market as well. I mean, there's new entrants in relation to social media. Consumer preferences are changing. Australians and consumers in many other markets are focusing much more on short form video as a format by which they want to access content. And so it is a really interesting time, but it's a really challenging time as well to make sure that with all the changes in the market, all the changes in what consumers wanted to see, that all of us who care about supporting public interest journalism are thinking through ways that we can help to ensure the sustainability of Australian news into the future.
And a final question, Josh, if I might. If you do move to the grant model and away from the contract model, would that, do you think, necessarily impact directly upon media organisations who've used the money they've received under these contractual arrangements with Meta to expand their staff base and their news offerings?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably important just to take a step back for a moment, Monica, and emphasize that there's a range of ways in which news publishers receive benefit from our platforms. There's the referral traffic that they receive organically. There are commercial agreements to support innovative products like Facebook News. There have been video content deals, and then there are grant programs or accelerator programs in which we can bring some of our expertise and our resources in order to support public interest journalism. And so we've always thought that there should be a multifaceted set of tools that we use in order to work with news publishers within Australia. And so I wouldn't want to speculate on exactly what that mix looks like in future, because we need to be responsive to what's happening in the market, responsive to what consumers want to see. But I think there's no doubt that everybody's going to need to look at a range of potential solutions here. There's not going to be any silver bullet, and it's just a matter of looking at which methods are most effective to supporting public interest journalism in Australia.
Josh, thanks very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Monica.